This is How About That Podcast, a show dedicated to all things Dallas Cowboys. With both objective and subjective perspectives, How About That Podcast is your place to hear about America's team. Now, here's Joseph Hoyt and Danny Morales.
Welcome to another episode of How About That Podcast. I'm Danny Morales, joined here again with Joe Hoyt and Joey Aliberti. Some unfortunate news in the Cowboys world that we got to start off with. One of my all-time favorite Cowboys, as I'm sure many of us can say that, Larry Allen has suddenly passed away at the age of 52. Some pretty tough news for Cowboys fans and fans of football alike. Kind of unexpected, but yeah, Joe, I'm sure you heard about that.
Yeah, heard a lot about it. And one thing, it's crazy the timing of that, because we had literally just talked about Larry Allen on the podcast last time. And the thing that we kind of talked about was his immense strength, the fact that he benched 700 pounds at one point, made 225 pounds look like the SpongeBob SquarePants bench press with the teddy bears on each side. He was a mountain of a man who, in terms of his strength, who made incredible plays and made offensive line entertaining. He made offensive lines so fun to watch. But, you know, that was on the field stuff. And since his sudden passing on Sunday, we've also heard so much about the person. You know, we talked today with Mike Zimmer, who literally was in Dallas the entire time that Larry Allen was in Dallas. And, you know, he said that they watched the film today, a little video tribute to Larry on the first day of mandatory minicamp. And even Mike Zimmer, known as a tough guy, was brought to tears by it. You know, Larry Allen's been called a gentle giant. I know Emmitt Smith did a long video talking about the fragility of life in response to it. You know, at 52 years old, you're on vacation in Mexico and suddenly you're gone. My heart goes out to his family. I can't even fathom just the twists and turns of the last 48 hours there. But one thing we've seen is just all the appreciation and support and love for Larry Allen and the person he was. You know, everyone always says he didn't talk much, but clearly his presence has been felt over and over again, not only in the Dallas Cowboys community, but in the NFL community.
Yeah, without ever having met Larry myself, obviously, just the outpouring of just love and support and emotion that you see on social media and on TV, it speaks volumes about the person that he was and how renowned he was around the facility and around the league. Pretty special guy. Did you ever get a chance to see Larry Allen in person, Joe?
Yeah, because growing up in the Bay Area, ironically, I saw him as a 49er, though. And he spent the last two seasons with the 49ers. Yeah. And, you know, people forget, man, you know, even at that stage of his career, he was still really, really good. Frank Gore, I think the most career rushing yards Frank Gore ever had was when Larry Allen was on the 49ers offensive line. And Frank Gore is a potential Hall of Famer there, too. So, and Danny, you know, the other unique thing about Larry Allen for you and I was we grew up and went to school with a lot of people that went to Sonoma State. And ironically, that's where Larry Allen went. And, you know, Sonoma State is now a defunct. There's no football team there. They've been undefeated since I forget exactly what year they canceled the football program, but they always had Larry Allen. And, you know, players or people we knew talked all the time about what Larry would do for the community there and how much he meant there. And that was, I know I texted with a couple Sonoma State people yesterday just that went to school there, and they were shocked and completely saddened by this. So Larry's impact was obviously felt in so many different ways. If you ever get the chance, we haven't really wrote about it on Lone Star Live, but if you get the chance to read about his upbringing and what he had to survive growing up in Compton, you know, there's a story about how at one point he was thinking about joining a gang and his mom wouldn't let him. So she sent him to the school of the other gang so that he would not join a gang because, you know, both sides there. So just, you know, he grew up, went through a lot, and obviously turned into an amazing career and an amazing life that was shockingly and suddenly cut short this past Sunday.
I could be thinking of someone else. I'm pretty sure it's Larry Allen. Did his son go to De La Salle?
Yes, I believe so. I think it was Larry Allen III, if I remember correctly.
And I want to say he was kind of around our age, wasn't he? Not he was a little bit younger. I got to double check on that one.
I
But
think a little bit. I'm kind of in the same confidence level with you on that, but it sounds right. I believe so.
I'll have to check on that one. But I ran into Larry Allen, the randomest thing in the world. So when I was looking for colleges, I wanted to go to Oregon like you did. And so I took a trip to Eugene with my dad. And then we're flying home from Eugene to SFO in like a little puddle jumper. And I'm in baggage claim. And there's just this gigantic man wearing like a pretty clean suit. I'm like, holy shit, that's Larry Allen. So for whatever reason, Larry Allen was on my flight home from Eugene, and he had his Super Bowl rings on his finger. Guy was massive, super random. I don't know what he was doing in Eugene. I don't know if he was checking out the school for his son or what, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was my Eugene flight. But yeah, that's the only time I saw Larry Allen in person. I got the appreciation for how massive he was. And then I don't know if you saw that little cut up somebody made on Twitter or X, and it's against the Colts and John Madden's announcing the game, and he is just absolutely just pulverizing this poor defensive lineman the entire drive. You almost feel bad for him by the end of the drive because he's just making him just regret his life at that moment, and it was pretty fun to watch.
I forgot who said it, Dan, but someone talked about how at the college level, you'll see sometimes a vast athletic difference or strength difference between players. Like, whether it's Alabama going up against a D2 team, that they hit you to play, and it's, it's like Caden Proctor, the 5-star offensive tackle. They're just throwing some dude who was a 1-star recruit, right? Just throwing him. They shouldn't be on the same playing field, right? Someone said that Larry Allen made NFL players look like that. Guys that did not look like they deserved to be on the same field. And when you consider the fact that the dude could literally bench 700 pounds, I asked Tyler Smith today, like, have you ever, can you even fathom benching 700? He's like, no, I've put that on my back before. He said, maybe I'll get there eventually. Mike Zimmer talked about how sometimes the night before games, they noticed that an opposing defensive lineman would show up on the injury report, and he'd be like, oh, that's the Larry Allen flu, because no one wanted to go against him. But it was pretty clear just around the facility today that people definitely wanted to play with the guy. Man, it's just sudden, tragic. When you think of 52 years old and the family that he left behind, it's heartbreaking, truly.
Yeah, it puts everything in perspective. And I forgot just how young he was when the news article popped up and it said 52. Not that makes it any better or worse, but it's just the age was shocking to how young he still was, and how tragic of an event.
Yeah, his presence was felt today though at the facility for sure. Day one of minicamp. So
yeah, he's a Ring of Honor, right? Cowboys Ring of Honor. I know he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah.
Yep. One of the best to ever do it. I mean, it's the fact that he also, I didn't know this, Dan, really, I just didn't remember this, but like when, doing research after he passed away, I didn't realize too that he played all across the line. Like I always just thought of him just as a guard. No, he played pretty much every position except center.
I did not know that. I forgot he played for the Niners.
Yeah, dude. He played 2 years for the Niners. And I think maybe that's why they ended up, or maybe he did that because he always planned to stay around in the Bay Area. And it's funny, you mentioned Sarah De La Salle. I now remember seeing him at a Sarah De La Salle game and be like, oh my God, that's Larry Allen. And that's a dude like around normal human beings. He sticks out and is unforgettable, just like you saw him in baggage claim.
Yeah, you couldn't miss him because not too many people at SFO look like Larry Allen with the bling on their finger and wearing a full suit on the plane, which baller move on his part.
Yeah, dude, I can't imagine how strong the fibers on those suits had to be just to retain that much muscle, man.
I do feel bad for the person that was sitting next to Larry Allen on that flight because I'm sure it was a very uncomfortable flight.
I've sat before in middle seats with like two big dudes before, and I've been like crunched. And to your point, man, hopefully that was a first class seat and they had a little extra room, anyways.
There's nothing worse than sitting middle on a plane.
It's the worst.
I can't do it.
No, I heard Joey likes to do that though. I don't know why. Like, yeah, that's his favorite thing.
He said he feels safe. He's snug in between two individuals.
Yeah, especially when it's someone like Larry Allen on my right and then maybe like a Vince Wilfork on my left.
You couldn't have chosen a better person to be the opposite person of Larry Allen on that.
Vince Wilfork. Wow.
When you guys mentioned high school, it just made me think. I saw Vince Wilfork in my high school because his son was playing against our team, and that was like oh my goodness, he's three people in one.
Was his son big too?
No, his son was a cornerback. Vince was Vince. You just saw him on the bleachers being like, wow, that's actually Vince Wilfork.
Was his nickname Snacks? No, that's Damian Harrison, right?
Yeah, Damon Harrison.
One of the greatest nicknames for a defensive tackle, Snacks.
It doesn't get much better. No. But all right. Well, again, rest in peace to Larry Allen and condolences to his family. I, again, can't imagine just how tough the last, 72 hours has been. But we also, Danny, did have first day of minicamp today. Like I said, Larry Allen's presence was felt, and there were a couple other interesting things that came out today. We actually had a chance to talk with Micah Parsons, Dan, who was in attendance and practicing.
Got a chance. I heard he's pretty good with the media. Is this true?
When he wants to talk, he's good with the media. And today he wanted to talk, and today he talked for a long time. And he talked about a lot of different things, and he talked about his sumo wrestling experience. He said that he's trying to recruit some sumo wrestlers to play defensive tackle for the Cowboys. He called them basically said they were immovable objects, which if you watch the video with him going up against a sumo wrestler, it's pretty easy to see.
I saw that video, and I'm all about having a good time, like young, travel, do things. But like I was watching that video, I'm just like, please don't get hurt. Like you could tell the first rep when he lost, like he looked genuinely pissed off that he lost. And then he's like, I'm not losing to this guy again. He was going like full out 100% on the second rep. And I'm like, just don't get hurt. How do you explain that to Jerry Jones? Sorry, I got hurt in Japan, sumo wrestling.
You know what's crazy about that too? He was saying that and I didn't know this, but it makes sense. In sumo wrestling, it's kind of like karate or taekwondo where they have like belts. It's like there's tiers to them. And he said like there's like black belt versions of sumo wrestlers, basically just big elite wrestlers. He said he was going up against like the equivalent of like the white belt sumo wrestler in that video too, which, I mean, God, does that paint a better picture of how tough it is to move those guys?
I've heard all they do is sumo wrestle, eat white rice, and sleep. That's their life.
I mean, sign me up.
A lot of white rice.
Yeah, dude, it would take a lot to get me up to that level. But Mike also talked about, he was also asked extensively kind of about which was one of the storylines of last week, which was his absence at OTAs. And it was weird because last week he reported to OTAs, he was around the facility, but he didn't practice. So, and then today was the first day of mandatory stuff, which CeeDee Lamb missed, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But Micah was there for it. And he talked a little bit kind of about the scrutiny he received, or he was asked about the scrutiny he received because he didn't show up in terms of, being a leader and kind of what his absence could do to the culture. And he basically said like, hey, well, the best quote I thought was, have you seen or remember the Titans? we're going to spend a lot of time in Oxnard and a lot of chemistry building there, which, to his credit is probably really true. They announced that they're going to spend basically a month in Oxnard for training camp this year, Dan. Not a bad place to be.
No, I'd love to make it out there one day, but I feel like that gets blown out of proportion when someone doesn't report and they're like, oh, they're not going to build team chemistry. They're losing out on valuable reps. And it's like these guys are getting so many reps, like when they go to Oxnard, that I'm not really worried about them missing a couple reps here and there now. And this whole chemistry, team building, it's like these guys have been on the team for years now. The chemistry's there, and they kind of lead by example on the field. So I think that is something that gets a little blown out of proportion. And if anyone's going to miss time and then just come back, hit the ground running, I feel like Micah Parsons is one of those guys that's just in freakishly good shape where he could take off a week or two and not skip a single beat.
Yeah, he mentions today too, Dan. He's like, hey, did we forget that Aaron Donald in 2017 missed all of training camp, showed up day one of practice for the regular season, and then won the Defensive Player of the Year award?
Yeah, I think he'll be just fine. But what's even crazier is the fact that people like CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Ayuk, these people that are making the decision to skip camp, even though it's going to cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're fine with that. But then I guess when you look at what Justin Jefferson made $100,000 really isn't all that much in the end.
No, and it's funny because to us that's like, oh my god, could you imagine $100,000 like check in her? What would you do with $100,000 right now, Dan? Go.
Buy a house.
That was such a basic answer, but so accurate.
What do you want me to say?
I know, but like, okay, you can't buy a house. What else you buying with $100,000 off the top of your head? Go.
A new set of golf clubs.
Okay, what else? Lessons for said new golf clubs.
Okay, so it's funny you say that. I wasn't going to mention this till later. It's totally off topic. It's about golf. So we're really going off topic here, but I woke up this morning and I'm like, you know what? I haven't golfed in a while. And I looked at the weather. The weather's fantastic around here. And I've never golfed by myself. Like I've never gone out and said, I'm just going to go to the golf course by myself. Just never done it. And so I texted one guy, he couldn't go. And then I woke up this morning, I was like, you know what? It's too nice to not golf. So I booked my own tee time, ended up playing 9 because I was over it. It was the worst 9 holes I've ever played my entire life. I will never do it again. And I think it's because I rented such nice clubs when we were in Bend that now that I've come back to my shitty ones, my golf game has gone to shit. But yeah, never doing that again. Only golf with the boys.
Wild you say that, because I actually love golfing by myself, and it's not anything compared to playing with your buddies, because obviously that's elite. But
yeah,
I think it's fun to just be outdoors and drink a couple beers and get some sun and compete against yourself, but it's a little bit more chill. And usually one thing I found is the people you play with I've had like 1 or 2 bad experiences. Usually people are really nice and fun and kind of trying to do the same thing as you. So surprised by that.
They were nice, but like when I shank a drive with you, I can express my anger and frustration and scream and throw things. But when I'm with 3 strangers, I can't do that. So I shank my drive into the trees and then I just have to just say, oh gosh darn. Like I'm so mad inside, but I can't show it. And then
OG Willikers, no.
At the turn, I'm like, peace out, have fun, I'm out of here.
Wild, man. Well, hey, I mean, playing by yourself is not as fun as playing with multiple people. So, did you hit up Joey? Joey may have flown all the way out to California to play with you.
I had a 10:07 a.m. tee time, so you could have caught the red eye from Lowell, Mass, or where are you from? Worcester, Mass. You in Worcester?
Worcester.
Would have caught the red eye from Boston. I would have met you there. And have you ever? So you, I imagine, have never played golf just like alone, right? Like you're the only one playing.
Well, I booked the tee time, and there was no one else in that slot, and I booked it 2 hours before, and then somehow 3 solos also booked that tee time. So no, I haven't.
I'm sorry. It's fun when it's just you. When it's just you with 3 random guys, I can imagine that's not. And
one was a female, Joey.
3 people.
Yes.
I can imagine it's not a thrilling experience.
No, and it also looked bad because I was by far the youngest in the group, but I was the only person with a golf cart.
Oh, that's a tough look.
Also, bad look.
That's a tough look.
That might be the worst part of it.
Felt like a real piece of crap.
Yeah, but it's not too outside of what you normally feel. So, but anyways, yeah, CeeDee or Micah Parsons basically said missing OTAs is not a big deal. My one question for you, Danny, and we'll move on after this with that, is do you want Micah to be more of a quote leader? Do you look at not showing up to OTAs as kind of an indictment against that? To be honest with you, I don't from that standpoint in terms of like leadership at OTAs, because he was also said he's been around the facility a little bit, hot tubbing. He met with Paul Gunter to go over the playbook. Said he only talked 20 words. He's probably talked only about 20 words with Mike Zimmer, which I thought was interesting. But he's kind of alluded to the idea that Zimmer's a little bit quiet. Still a little interesting to hear that. But do you want Micah to be more of a hands-on, always around the facility leader, quote unquote?
Yeah, of course. I mean, who wouldn't like that? Who wouldn't want the face of their defense to be around and be that example for this rookie class or any young player coming in? But at the end of the day, I think he leads by example. Again, I'm not around the facility. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not at practice. I don't know how he is in terms of that. But in terms of leading by example, I don't think there's anyone better on that team. His energy, his enthusiasm, like just the passion he plays for, I think is contagious. So I think the leadership that he displays is more of a lead by example. Maybe you see it differently. Maybe you actually hear him around the facility and he gets guys pumped up that way. But if I see a guy playing with that motor on defense, it's going to make me want to run through a brick wall too. So to answer your question, yes, I'd love him around, but I think his play speaks for itself in terms of his leadership.
I think that's well said. And the other thing too, I think of constantly is like Oregon QBs have gotten this a lot, where it's like either Mariota or Justin Herbert. It's like they're not loud, they're quiet. They're not great leaders because they're not loud. And one thing I've always kind of said in response to that is, to be honest with you, like you can't force leadership on guys. Like not to name names, but like I've had teammates that I've had over the years that were really loud growing up, where I'm like, dude, like, and they try to be leaders. I'm like, you're not a leader. Stop. Or they do it a weird way, to be honest with you. Without knowing the guy, part of me thinks that maybe Russell Wilson's time in Seattle might have been a little bit indicative of that, of a guy who was trying to being loud, talkative, trying to be a leader, and it didn't resonate with everyone there. So you can't force it on people, I don't think either.
No, I want a leader. I don't want a cheerleader. You know what I mean? I don't think you can appoint yourself a leader. It's something that just is innate. It just happens. It's organic. Your teammates will kind of just crown you a leader. And like I said, I think his play speaks to that. And what he does on the field makes him a leader. It makes people want to follow what he does. He sets the tone. He's set the blueprint for the rest of that team to follow. So I don't think he needs to be this vocal rah-rah cheerleader. Maybe he is. I have no idea. But I don't think he needs to do that to be quote unquote a leader for this team.
And there's a difference, Dan, between someone who is bad for a culture, or does things that are bad for a culture, and someone who just either is a like net neutral in that regard in terms of actions, right? Like not showing up to OTAs. That's not a good thing for the culture, right? But is it a bad thing? To be honest with you, I don't look at it that way. Maybe Mike McCarthy and everyone else says, you don't show up here, you're ruining a chance to build that culture, and that's a negative, right? Maybe. I don't look at it that way personally. Maybe that's not, maybe that's being too conservative, prudent with a take. I just, I don't look at it that way. And I do agree with him, to be honest with you. Oxnard is going to be a long month and a long training. And by this point, too, Micah Parsons has kind of showed who he is in terms of playing. And, I also think his playing ability is worth any net neutral action in terms of leadership, in terms of like a up and down there.
Yeah, you got to take the big picture perspective here. It's the days that they're missing now are going to mean nothing. It's a very long season. It's a gauntlet, and they will be just fine. So I'm not too worried about that at all.
People also haven't really been worried about CeeDee Lamb being gone. That's kind of one big takeaway. We talked to a lot of players, and Dak, we talked to him during OTAs. We talked to Brandon Cooks. Today we talked with Micah a little bit about it, like the idea of CeeDee Lamb missing stuff. Zach Martin had a great quote about how, like, it was a great question. I believe Saad, I think it was Saad Yusuf asked it, but how, or maybe it was Nick Harris. Anyways, someone asked a great question about compartmentalizing, like, the idea of business is business, doing the contract negotiation stuff and things that are involved there, with actually wanting to be at the facility and be with your teammates. And Zach Martin, who did it last year, said it's tough, like, to be in that position. It's stressful. You want to be there with your teammates, but you can't. It sucks. So right now, CeeDee Lamb is not there, but I think everyone we've talked to said if there's one person we're not worried about kind of getting their work in and all that stuff, it's probably CeeDee Lamb. And Danny, do you wonder if not showing up for OTAs mandatory minicamp is indicative of maybe a season that could be less than where it was last year, because clearly he was an ascending player. What do you think about that?
I think him missing OTAs is going to have next to zero impact on his season, and I think he's only going to continue to ascend. I think that just speaks to today's NFL. It's become the norm. You hear about it every single offseason, or when teams start getting into OTAs. it's the norm. The power has shifted to the player in some respects, where when players are skipping out, it's just another week in OT. Like we just hear about it all the time. It's nothing new. And if there's a player I'm not concerned about that's going to take a step back because he's missing these really not so critical days, it's CeeDee Lamb. I think he's going to be just fine. He's not going to forget how to run routes. He's not going to forget how to be in such great shape. Um, I don't know his leadership in terms of like locker room presence. But again, kind of like Micah Parsons, where he just gets it done on the field. He doesn't seem like a very vocal player to me, like on the sideline or at practice. Again, I don't know that because I'm not at the facility, but just as someone just watches games, he doesn't look to be like a vocal leader, but he's one of those lead by example type of guys too.
Yeah, and if he misses the next 3 days, he'll miss, like we talked about, over $100,000. But he's not the only one. Brandon Ayuk's doing it too. To your point, it's kind of yeah, it's the way business is going. I will say though that this was, in my opinion, the first serious step that CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys might be at an impasse in terms of contract negotiations. And of course, by the time you even hear this podcast, that might change. Maybe they come into an agreement tomorrow, right? But it doesn't seem like that. And my question is, how vast is this impasse, right? Is knowing CeeDee Lamb, one of them ones, as he said, I think he's going to want to get paid $35 million a year, just like Justin Jefferson. And a cent lower is not going to appeal to him. So do the Cowboys want to pay him $35 million, especially considering their salary cap situation kind of moving forward with, you even forget, like Tyler Smith soon eventually will have to get paid, right? Then he's on an all-pro trajectory. So Oso Odighizuwa is going to have to get paid. Or you got to say goodbye to some guys. I wonder how vast that impasse is, Dan.
Well, I think it's kind of clear now. I mean, they waited until Justin Jefferson got the deal done. So now they can kind of work around that. It's hard to argue against what he's going to get paid. And I heard a quote from Micah Parsons today talking about how CeeDee is going to get that bag. He's going to get paid.
He's going to get that Brinks truck. That Brinks truck.
That's what he said. So his teammates get it. They're not going to hold anything against him. It's a business at the end of the day. The NFL is a business. And like I said, there's no reason why he shouldn't make that type of money. But my question to you is, would you offer him the same contract, or do you think he deserves more than Justin Jefferson? And that's tough because it's not, when you're comparing players, it's very similar. But when you're comparing franchises and where they're at financially, that's the big difference, because you have a rookie quarterback versus a quarterback who's up for a contract as well, who's looking for Mahomes, all those big players. He's looking for what they're making. He's looking for that Kirk Cousins money. So, or the Jared Goff money. So how do you pay someone Jared Goff money and make him the highest paid receiver?
Danny, this isn't me source reporting this or anything. This is a feel, just based on actions and kind of conversation and now how the way things have kind of matriculated. I don't think the Cowboys want to pay him $35 million. And that's why I'm questioning how vast the impasse is.
If they don't, somebody will. Somebody will.
Which goes to my next point. And you kind of talked about it too. It's a little bit more player, power of the player. When do teams genuinely ever have leverage with good players? I'm trying to think, to be honest.
They don't. And I think it's only leaning more towards the way of the player when you're seeing how much guaranteed money is in these contracts now.
Well, that's why I think this goes back to the ultimate mistake. And I know that cap situation's nuanced and, we've talked about it ad nauseum, but if you don't sign guys early, then you've lost all leverage. That's kind of the idea I'm starting to get around to. Like consider, so let's consider CeeDee Lamb. I don't think the Cowboys are going to want to move off of CeeDee Lamb, right? I think that's a pillar they're going to want. So ultimately, what are they going to do, Dan? They're going to pay him, in my opinion, they'll probably pay him $35 million a year with maybe less fully guaranteed money than the 110 JJ got. But anyways, leverage-wise, let's look at the Brandon Ayuk situation in San Francisco. That's a situation where, if the Niners just say, you know what, we're just not going to pay you what you want, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to Brandon Ayuk? He'll get traded, and to your point, someone else will pay him. We see it all the time.
But I think the difference in that, I think the difference in that scenario is, I almost see it as the Niners having a little more leverage in the fact that they have Christian McCaffrey, they have Deebo Samuel, and they have George Kittle.
Yeah.
Yes, Ayuk is important to that offense, but can that offense still orchestrate without him? Absolutely. Yes, they can. CeeDee Lamb, especially with this Cowboys offense having Zeke as your RB1, he is your entire offense. Whether we like it as Cowboys fans or not, there's really not a whole lot else that's going to scare a defensive coordinator, that's going to shift coverage over to someone besides him. Jalen
I know.
Tolbert's not going to demand double teams. Brandon Cooks is not keeping defensive coordinators up at night. He's just not. All they really have is CeeDee Lamb.
I know, and that's why to the point, and I think we're just getting to this. But what's the worst thing that happens then to Brandon Ayuk? Oh shoot, I got traded, and then I still got my money anyways. Unless he's just in love with San Francisco Bay Area. You know what I mean? That's the only negative thing I think for a player these days. Otherwise, they have all the leverage. Because Brandon Ayuk just says, "Trade me."
Yeah, I mean, what's more important, him potentially winning a Super Bowl or him getting that bag, the quote unquote Brinks truck? Like, you could argue there's no better scenario in the NFC, as much as it pains me to say this, than the Niners to put yourself in contention for a ring every year, because he's been there every year. So unless he's more concerned with his bag, to your point, I don't think there's really anything to lose. Ooh, I got traded. Darn, I'm still one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL. Poor me. There's not much to lose there for him.
Yeah, that's a great point. Then I mean, if you genuinely have, if you, the first thing on your mind is getting a championship, that could be the one thing, right? Because if Brandon Ayuk gets traded to Tennessee, right, like Titans aren't competing for a Super Bowl this year, but he could get that bag. Hypothetically, Steelers. I mean, that would have been interesting. I think that would have been kind of a good fit for all.
They
If
could use a receiver, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's a different topic. Any last thoughts on CeeDee and Micah, Dan?
No, I just think that I kind of just saw this coming. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. It's the way the NFL is today. Guys aren't playing on their fifth year. They're looking for that new contract and they're holding out. It's kind of just par for the course. Jerry has shown a track record of retaining his own. It's just how much is he going to pay him? I'm fairly confident that CeeDee Lamb's going to get paid. He's going to be a Cowboy for the remainder of his career. Like I said, it's just going to depend how much. I think, unfortunately, Justin Jefferson is going to be your starting point. Their numbers are pretty comparable. I was actually going to look up his stats, and then I forgot, it might have been Todd Archer. I'm not sure exactly who it was, but somebody tweeted out the numbers comparing. It was Todd Archer comparing the two. 60 games for Justin Jefferson, 392 catches. 66 games for CeeDee Lamb, 395 catches. Very similar. 5,900 yards for Justin Jefferson, 5,100 for CeeDee. Pretty close. And then over that time, CeeDee Lamb has 2 more touchdowns than Justin Jefferson. So the numbers don't lie. I don't know how you can offer him less. He's a very similar player.
I don't think the Cowboys want to do that right now, which is why the impasse I think exists, and which why I think you gotta wonder if training camp if CeeDee shows up, unless
hypothetically he's owed what, like 18 this year, something like that. I don't know the exact
17.9 fifth year option.
17.9. So hypothetically, let's just say Dallas doesn't want to get a deal done. They want to wait until his contract's up. That's an option, right? They can just make him play out the year on that contract and then wait until
if he wants to play the contract, yeah. But what if he doesn't?
And then if he doesn't, what? He just takes a financial hit for every single game he misses? Is that how that works?
I mean, we've seen that before. Am I tripping? Where Le'Veon Bell did it, actually, and it didn't work out for him.
And then look at his career. It went to shit after. Not to say CeeDee Lamb's career would follow that trajectory, but it doesn't seem like a smart.
No, to your point, I think he would play it. It's just a thought, but I mean, that is one option. I've heard people talking in the NFL about, speaking of Ayuk again, that's something maybe that he does this year. Just play that option, and, same class as CeeDee, and then he gets traded or he goes as a free agent next year. So interesting. Dude.
To that, I feel like the risk of that is it would leave a sour taste in the player's mouth. Like, well, they didn't want to pay me when they had the chance. Now 31 other teams have the opportunity to pay me. Why would I show loyalty to this team that didn't want to pay me when they had the chance? screw those guys, I'm going elsewhere.
No, facts. Yeah, no, that's part of me wonders, I mean, about this Dak situation too. Like if that same thing, right? I do think ultimately both those guys get signed, right? But like even bringing it to this point and playing hardball makes you wonder just what kind of the taste in their mouth is, to your point.
Let me ask you this. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, order those one or two on your priority list of getting that deal done.
I mean, I always defer to the quarterback in this case. But yeah, I'd stick with Dak in that case.
Okay, and then I have another question for you. What team would finish with a better record? The Cowboys with no Dak Prescott and Trey Lance under center for the whole year? Or Dak Prescott and no CeeDee Lamb as your wide receiver one for the whole year?
Yeah, it's Dak Prescott, no CeeDee Lamb.
That'd be like a New England Patriots offense. It'd be so boring to watch.
I don't think so though, because you still have Jake Ferguson. Brandon Cooks has been making plays. He had another 50-yard touchdown catch today over Deron Bland after Deron Bland had an interception in 7-on-7s. Cooks looks good, man. So, I mean, I don't think they'd be anemic.
They would lack big plays, I think.
CeeDee Lamb is irreplaceable, but I think in terms of how would they do better, I think it's the first hypothetical, or the hypothetical of Dak at QB and no CeeDee Lamb.
Let's just hope it's hypotheticals and that's never the reality, because that is a scary thought to think of the Cowboys with no Dak Prescott or CeeDee Lamb.
I'm excited, dude. I'm excited to see Trey Lance in games. He's going to get a lot of reps, and coaches have talked about how he's the master of the offense now. But in OTAs, there's been and then minicamp there's been flashes. There's also been some inconsistencies, I think, which is kind of what his career was in San Francisco. But I'm curious to see what he does in the field.
That whole quarterback situation we've talked about at length, it's just hard to imagine you have three quarterbacks suit up on your game day roster every week. It just doesn't seem feasible to me. That just seems like a wasted active roster spot that you could be using elsewhere, whether it's O-line depth, D-line depth, which is thin, another receiver, another special teams player. So you don't think they would actually suit up three quarterbacks on game day, correct?
Well, remember, Dan, they can have an emergency third QB. That's the rule.
And that doesn't count towards your roster?
No, it doesn't count as a roster spot or an active roster spot. So that's literally if your first two QBs go down now, because they're technically not active, the emergency third QB, but then they come into the game. So we didn't see it once last year. Obviously, we would have seen it in the NFC Championship Niners-Eagles where the rule came from. But no, so it's that part's kind of irrelevant. So they'll always have three QBs ready.
Is that a new rule?
That was this past year. The whole year they had it.
All those Niner fans complained and they got their way?
Pretty much, man. And, I mean...
Typical.
Yeah, typical. They always get their way, except in the Super Bowl. So, there you go. All right, let's end it. Let's kind of end it there. We'll go to Morales. What's on Morales' mind, if he has anything, or he might have already said it with the golf thing. But
yeah.
I
was gonna save the golf for that, but then it just kind of transitioned into what would I spend $100,000 on? It'd be a brand new set of clubs, and I've realized something. It's not me, it's the clubs. Because when I had a brand new set of clubs in Oregon, I was a halfway decent golfer.
No, Danny, no, this is not one of those instances. You played well in Oregon. You played well. It happens. You play well sometimes.
I also realized that the head of my driver is too small. And that's the reason I'm shanking everything. Because the driver that I use in Oregon, the head was like twice as big.
I'd put stock in that your driver, if you had a nicer driver, would be better. I've seen it with other people too. But I think, just because you had one bad day doesn't mean your irons suck,
No. But I think I lost like 8 balls on the first 3 holes. So that was bad. And then the irons in Oregon were brand new. My irons are 20 years old. So I was all thrown off. I had to readjust. Playing with strangers, I was uncomfortable. It was hot out. I didn't put enough deodorant on. It was just a bad day.
See, there it is. Yep, you just smelled.
I didn't have a Bloody Mary at the clubhouse pregame.
By the way, those John Daly's are still one of the best cocktails I've ever had on the course. Those are incredible.
Elite move. Shout out to Quail Run Golf Course in Bend, Oregon, I believe it was called.
Mm-hmm.
When you order a John Daly at the turn, they add the vodka, very, very, very hefty pour, and then you add the iced tea and lemonade. That's next level. It was great, but they sneak up on you. They do.
Joey, quickly before we go, what would you do with $100,000 right now? Go.
That's not a house.
That's not a house. No.
Because that's boring, apparently.
No, it's the right move. It's the smart move and the right move.
Yeah. I would say next move would be get a car.
That's also not. That's not on the. No, you can't do that either.
Invest.
No, have some fun,
dude.
man.
All right,
Okay, come on.
Fun. You want me to go fun response?
Fun.
I would wait for a Saturday where there's like a UFC event in Vegas. Maybe the one at the Sphere, actually, that's going to be happening in like July or whatever. And I'd book a long weekend around that where we're golfing at the craziest places, got a cool like penthouse hotel. It's just me and all my friends having a good time. I think that would be very fun.
Would you pay for your friends or would you make them pay?
No, I mean, if I had to spend $100,000 for fun, I would pay for like the room and the
That's
ticket.
it?
I wouldn't pay for like, I don't know. I wouldn't pay for
Okay,
everything.
no, I clapped.
I'd pay for a good
No. Yeah, I clapped this up as that was a great idea, and now no. Come on, you can't be
You think I'm
cheap when
paying-
you just got $100K.
I was trying to test his character and he failed. He goes, no,
He
I'd
failed.
make them pay.
I
Danny-
never said I'd make them pay. I'd pay for the room. I'd pay for the tickets. I'd pay for the golf.
What would you put them on, like Frontier Airlines or something? Come on, man.
They're driving. I'd pay for the
Danny,
flight.
Joey's definitely the guy that doesn't bring the golf cart back. Let's call a spade a spade, or not the golf cart, the grocery cart.
Oh,
Well, yeah, that too. And then he's also the guy in the parking lot that's like, hey, can someone else take the cart back? I gotta go.
100%.
See you guys.
I'm the
100%.
opposite. I have tendonitis in my foot, and I brought the cart back when I played this weekend.
And now he's playing his tiny violin about his tendonitis in his foot. Oh.
I'm just saying. I think.
Speaking of shopping carts, I'm a firm believer in the shopping cart theory. Maybe you're familiar. Sounds like you are, Joe.
That's why I brought it up. Yeah.
You can tell a lot about a person by how they handle the shopping cart in the parking lot. Do they just put it on the island? Do they just leave it in a parking spot? Or do they actually take the extra 2 minutes to walk it back where it belongs so that someone else doesn't have to do it for them? I'm a firm believer in that. I observe in parking lots just to see.
And you both think that I don't do that?
I bring it back every time.
That wasn't the question.
What'd you ask?
You think I don't bring it back?
100%. You leave it in, like, you probably leave it in a parking spot. Even worse. So
I
if
leave
someone
it
has to get out of their car,
behind someone's car just to ruin their day.
I'm sure you would. I could see
The slander is crazy.
Just really
no,
pissing me
if
off.
it's true.
I don't know. I feel like
I leave it right behind someone's car and I walk out of there.
I don't know. I feel like you do that to the wrong guy in Boston. It's gonna be a bad day for you.
Yeah.
Hey, take your grocery cat back. Cat.
That's really good, Joe. That's really good. It sounds like you've been
We go to the bar. Hey, we go to the bar.
You live by the Cheers bar? That's in Boston, right?
I honestly have no idea. I don't. I live like 50 minutes away from Boston.
Where everybody knows your name.
That's the first thing anyone asks when they talk about Boston. Did you go to the Cheers bar? And you don't even know what it is?
No one talks about it.
You should adventure outside of Worcester. There's a lot going on in Massachusetts.
Worcester.
He's not even in Worcester.
It's all the same.
How many towns / cities do you know in Massachusetts, Danny?
A few.
Worcester, Boston.
Salem, where the witches are.
Okay.
Lowell.
Okay.
Boston.
No, I'm not counting that.
Is that not a city?
No, not in this game.
Can I phone a friend here? Joe, help me out.
How about Somerville?
Yeah, I know you know about Somerville because you were talking to me about Somerville.
No, I wasn't. Oh wait, I was. Yeah, you got to go to that show.
We'll see. I might have soured on that ever since you think I'm a shopping cart in the parking lot lever. So I was in until that.
Oh, I know one. Foxborough.
Yeah, there you go.
Joey, your challenge. I want you to, the next time you go grocery shopping, I want you to take a video of you bringing the shopping cart back, just so we have video proof that you can do it.
Okay. What if I just send you a video of me slamming the shopping cart into another car?
That's what I would expect. Nothing less.
Yeah, I bet you would.
All right, we got to get out of here. Danny, sign us off.
Well, yeah, learned a lot about Joey today. He's the guy in the parking lot that doesn't put the shopping cart back. So next time you see a shopping cart just floating in the parking lot, you can think of Joey. So on that note, thanks for joining us on another episode of How About That Podcast.
Thanks for listening to How About That Podcast.